Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running and nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, I'm your host, Ben Crossman. And hey, thank you so much for tuning into the show today. Today on the program, and by the way, I just touched my face. I have never been more aware of how much I touch my face than, this past week or so. So obviously coronavirus is probably going to come up here a couple of times. We apologize ahead of time, but it's hard to talk about anything else. So there you have it. Everyone, we hope that you're well. We hope that you're doing well and you're ready for some Computer America. So today on the program, we have the one, the only Mr. Ralph Bond. He is a longtime Computer America correspondent. And of course, we enjoy our conversations with him every single second Friday of the month. And we have a lot of great news articles. Obviously, we're going to let Ralph tell you about how he kind of picks these and how he sorts through all of the news, because really, one time a month, he gets to pick the best stories, the most interesting stories as he sees fit, and it's always a fun hour. So everyone, first things first though, computeramerica.com, that's where you'll find everything, including today's show notes. It will have links, it will have pictures, it will have key points, all that kind of thing, and of course, links to, anything that we talk about. While you're there, check out some of the recent articles, reviews. We reviewed some security cameras and the like, and of course, find us on social media. And last but not least, you can also find the podcast, which after today's live radio show, it's the second best way to tune in. So everyone, welcome into the program one more time, and let's go ahead and get things started. So as I said before, and he's perfectly unmuted. He's a professional. What can I say? Welcome onto the program once again. Touch my face again. Ralph Bond, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. You want to talk about touching your face? This is what I've been doing most of the week.
Yeah, just holding your head and screaming. Yeah,
and screaming. Oh my goodness gracious! I'll tell you, I don't know about where you live, Ben, but out here, I live in the Portland, Oregon area, and this morning, and my wife and I went separately in our respective cars out desperately searching for toilet paper, the most prized thing in the world right now, next to hand sanitizer, which is probably worth its weight in gold these days. I mean, it's just, who would have thunk that toilet paper would be the most exciting thing? And my wife actually found some at a Rite Aid store, which was she thought she was dreaming. She thought it must be paper towels. It can't be toilet paper.
Yeah, I kind of saw I kind of foresaw the paper mask, kind of being in short supply. Maybe latex gloves and things like that, because healthcare professionals need them. Toilet paper and hand sanitizer, and it's man, if this isn't a wake-up call for Americans, really people all over the world, to have a month's supply in the house, then I don't know.
Yeah. I live down the street from a very, very large LDS, Latter-day Saints, aka Mormon church, and our neighborhood has many of the folks in that faith. And one of the things they do is that their faith is such that they have decades and decades and decades of experience stockpiling things and so forth and so on. And to their credit, it's paying off for them.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully it's not the end of days. But before we get to that point, why don't we go ahead and just kind of try to transition the show a little bit to
Yes.
today's topics. And Ralph, as I was kind of saying in the introduction, we'll let you go ahead and explain how you how you kind of decipher, or not decipher, but go through a month's worth of news, because that's the period which you come on the show,
Yep.
and what catches your eye, what meets your criteria.
Well, yeah, what I look for, folks, as the science and technology trends correspondent for the show, is just that, science and technology trend related stories. And it's usually stuff that's in the research area or something that forecasts future products. Sometimes we look at products that are in the companies have filed patents for. That's going to come up in today's show, for example, and other things of that nature. And not least of which these days, of course, supercomputing, artificial intelligence, all these robotics, all these cutting edge technologies and areas that I look for. So I kind of scan the various news services and look for headlines that catch my eye, and then I condense the stories. They're not reproductions of the stories. They're kind of like greatest hits or highlights from each of the stories that I put in the show notes, and come out to computeramerica.com to get the show notes today to follow along if you want to, or to read stories we don't get a chance to cover today in the show. So that's kind of the gist of where we go each month with this segment, which is kind of fun because it's, in this world of terrible stock market and coronavirus, and also we can at least have some hope about science and technology. And one more thing about coronavirus.
Sure.
God, please put every supercomputer, every quantum computer, everything, every artificial intelligence algorithms that the scientists have for discovering new drugs and so on and so forth. Let's put it all to work and see if we can accelerate the creation of a vaccine for this horrible, terrible dilemma.
So, and this is actually a pretty good point, because obviously I think a lot of people think of the research and development, and they think of what goes into a drug, and there have been some, I guess, mechanisms that the government can pull, because we have the FDA. The FDA does some very strict things that, sure, we could just release untested drugs into the public, but the question is, they may cure coronavirus. It's just a matter of, well, in 3 months, is someone going to grow a leg out of their head?
Yeah, right, exactly.
It's testing. So, I feel like we have, computers definitely played a part in this, and technology, I think, has already played its part. Now it comes down to, hey, unfortunately, computers are not to the point where we can simulate an actual human body, let alone a wide range of humans under these test conditions. But I'm sure that computers have played their role. It's no longer a computer problem, I would say.
Yeah. Well, it's a bizarre times we're living in here.
Definitely. So, and of course, with that being said, why don't we go ahead and talk about, kind of one of these things that really encapsulates what we were just talking about with, computers and being able to model and predict and that kind of thing. Well, that's my best segue into quantum computers. They will allow for a whole new level of that kind of thing. And I just got to say, before we start this, it's crazy how, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, quantum computers, I've only heard about it from IBM, and of course in science fiction. But man, now it seems like every company has a horse in the race.
Yeah, they sure do. It's just almost like a stampede for quantum computing, and it's germane to our topic. We were just talking about doing computer-based research to find vaccines and antibiotics and so forth. But anyway, here's the headline. This comes from physics.org, based really on a Honeywell press release that was widely distributed. But the headline was Honeywell unveils plan for most powerful quantum computer. So again, this is from their press release. But here are the highlights. Honeywell recently said it will bring to market the world's most powerful quantum computer, per their claim, aimed at tackling complex scientific and business challenges. The company said it had achieved a breakthrough in quantum computing, which uses subatomic particles, as you know, Ben, of course, to speed up processing, and here's the part that I thought was really cool. They said they plan to launch these quantum computers to market them, to bring them to market in about 3 months. So this is not a year or 2 years. This is coming up soon, which I
Yeah.
thought was really impressive. Of course, the proof in the pudding. Let's see what happens when they actually do come to market, how if they live up to the claim. But goes on to say quantum computing is based, of course, this is a little refresh for some of our listeners who may not be up on this. Quantum computing is based on the use of quantum bits or qubits, which can perform trillions, not billions, not millions, trillions with a T of calculations per second. In some cases, they can outperform the fastest traditional supercomputers on the planet right now. So
Hmm.
that's pretty interesting. Again, in a nutshell, and correct me, Ben, if you have a different way of putting this, but a traditional computer bit is on or off,
Right.
zero or one. Qubits can have multiple things going on in one bit, as it were. So it's a whole different thing. That's why they produce these levels of calculations that are just mind blowing.
If anyone would like something much, I guess much more comprehensive, I'm not going to try to
Right.
repeat because we actually had some of the lead researchers from IBM
Yeah.
over in Switzerland
Yeah.
come on the show and talk to us about this.
Nice.
It's been about a year, but look up Computer America IBM research and make sure you designate research. And yeah, we've had two or three people who are on the front lines of this
Yeah.
explaining it as best as anyone can in the industry.
Yes.
So if you're more
Yes.
interested, check out some of the past shows. But Ralph, I would say nothing you said was wrong. So we'll go with
Yeah,
that.
yeah, it is. It's hard to put your head around it, but
Mhm.
it's worth checking out, everybody, because artificial intelligence, machine learning, quantum computing, all these things are really going to be they're,
They're
as
coming
Andy Grove
fast.
used to say, Andy Grove at Intel used to say, a strategic inflection point historically. So get on the boat here. But anyway, to finish this story, Honeywell sees its upcoming quantum computers serving a wide range of applications, such as, this was interesting to me, materials companies to help them explore new molecular structures, transportation companies to optimize logistics. So think about quantum computing maybe being applied to air traffic control, or someday autonomous car vehicle all being controlled. That could be interesting. Financial institutions might use this for faster and more precise software applications, so they can tell us faster and more accurately how terrible the market is doing. Oh, that would be these days. Anyway, and then last, again, ding, 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 applies to the world we're in right now, pharmaceutical companies to accelerate the discovery of new drugs, and I
Mhm.
might add possibly vaccines and certainly antibiotics. So interesting thing to watch. Let's see what happens in a few months when these computers come out.
And I know that the best timeline that the researchers could give me was maybe in 20, 30 years, these are going to be
Mm,
commonplace. Like we
mm,
keep thinking that they're kind of further along than they are.
mhm,
I got to
mhm,
say though that the speed at which it's already being adopted,
mhm.
uh, I think IBM Research had maybe 2 or 3 years ago they had the whole laboratory. It was kind of like the old computer pictures where people were working inside the computer with punch cards.
Oh, yeah.
People used to be able to stand inside computers because that's what it
Yes,
was.
yes.
And then of course now it was the same way with quantum computers just a couple of years ago. Now they have a fully self-contained. I would say it's about the size of a not a big room, but like maybe like a large van. And it was like Quantum One from IBM, and it's actually an application that people can buy and
Wow.
use in their own facility. So like they're actually selling quantum computers. So yeah, in just a matter of years, we went from strictly research to saleable product, and eventually
Yep.
they'll be useful products.
Yeah.
But for now, it's coming fast. It's coming fast, and it's
Yeah.
exciting. So
Yeah, and Ben, talking about deployment and useful and so forth. Useful also has to do with affordability. I
yeah.
didn't see anything in this press release or in this announcement that indicated what the price ranges would be like. So they're probably going to be pretty darn expensive, and only maybe major institutions are going to be able to afford them at the first. But your point's well made.
Well,
It
yeah.
seems like we're seeing the beginning of the flow of actual deployable, marketable quantum computing. So we'll see.
It's one of those things that I'm out here looking for, and I can't just go to like Google Shopping and find IBM Quantum One price, but it's one of those things that like they don't. Oh, actually, I found something here. The facility to build them and the factory to build them is going to cost about $100 million, and then
Wow.
each machine will be a few $1 million for parts and a
There you
few
go.
$1 million for labor, and that's
Yeah.
currently.
Yeah.
That will obviously come down, but yeah, it's not that useful right now, and it's prohibitively expensive. But hey, Ralph, just like everything technology
It'll go
wise,
down.
yeah, it will come down. I mean, right
Yep.
now, and I'm sure that this is a story that
Mhm.
you probably didn't catch in the last day or two, but Europe is, and
Mm.
this is a complete deviation. So, ladies and
Mhm,
gentlemen, if you're
mhm.
looking for the
Go
story,
for it.
but the deviation is that Europe is actually looking to kind of work at the issue of, and this relates because I was like, phones are so cheap that it's cheaper to throw them away than it is to fix them. Like,
Yep.
we almost
Yep.
consider some technology disposable. It's so
Mhm.
easy to make. Europe is looking to change that, Ralph. And like yesterday, they were talking about um, all phones, tablets, laptops, computers, most of our daily consumer electronics, they have to be repairable. They have to have swappable parts. There can't be any kind of like, proprietary monitor connection that is more expensive to replace than or more expensive to replace than it is to just throw it away. The issue of repairability, sustainability is something that going forward, Europe is definitely going to be enforcing. So,
Oh yeah, and hey Ben, related to that,
mhm,
if you want to point your browser, your search engine
sure.
to the word bloom, like a flower blooming, BLOOM,
Mhm.
laptop, and then add the word Autodesk, and you'll probably find my YouTube segment. I did an interview with some students who designed. This is several, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. I don't know how long ago it was. A
I
completely
found one from
recyclable laptop.
2011. I
There you
found one
go.
from 2011.
That might be it. And their vision was a completely modular, recyclable product, and was a very popular video. I think it had over 100,000 views. So yeah.
Yeah.
So I had the
Okay. We'll
joy
talk
of
about that one. But
interviewing
yeah.
these guys. Check it out sometimes, folks. It's really a fun story.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. So sustainability, and that's going to be an issue going forward, which is why I say
Yes.
that
Yes.
things right now are kind of cheap and disposable, but not a quantum computer. But hey,
Not yet.
not yet. The so let's just say that deviation over. Let's go head on into story number two.
Yes, this one's a lot of fun. This has some really interesting significance, and we'll get to the punchline at the end here. Story: two commercial satellites just docked in space for the first time. So we've had the International Space Station with lots of docking and that sort of thing. But what we're talking about here, friends, is two commercial satellites. One is an actual communication satellite. The second one you're going to find out is a satellite, if you want to call it that, that's designed to replenish and refuel the satellite that was in trouble. So I'll get into that. It's from The Verge, a story by Mary Beth Griggs. And let's get into this. It says, let's set the stage a little bit first. There are
Hmm.
approximately, and Ben, you know this, you showed me this wonderful online kind of view of
Yeah.
all the
The
satellites
I
stuff that's
think
in
it's either
orbit.
the Department of Defense or NASA
Yeah,
continuously tracks all orbiting
I know, it's
objects. Right.
fascinating. Yeah, so it says here there are approximately 3,000 satellites operating in Earth orbit, according to NASA, out of roughly 8,000 man made objects in total. All this stuff out there, right? But unfortunately, the majority of satellites revolving around the Earth are not operational. What? The majority of them aren't working? In fact, according to the data compiled by the Union of Concerned Scientists, less than 40% of the satellites that are in orbit now are operational. Less than 40%.
Mm.
Wow. Okay. So, February 25th, not that long ago, Northrop Grumman's Mission Extension Vehicle, that's a special satellite, if you want to call it that, that I alluded to earlier, docked with the Intelsat 901 communications satellite. So, Intelsat 901 was launched in June of 2001. It provides communications for Europe and a large part of the Atlantic Ocean region. So that's its job. And after nearly 19 years in space, Intelsat 901 is running low on fuel. So if you don't do anything, people on the ground are going to lose the use of this satellite. It becomes a dead satellite and joins that club, which is not great. So, thinking ahead, planning ahead, the Intelsat team decided a few years ago to sign on to a mission that would send another satellite to extend the life of its ailing spacecraft by another 5 years. In other words, give it a jolt of fuel. So, this docking milestone may lead, and this is my value add. I said, but first thing that came to my mind was, here's a whole new industry. to repair and revive satellites that are dead or dying. So I think that's an intriguing thing to think about. So I thought this was a very important story that was kind of did not get a lot of attention, but I thought I'd bring it to the show because I think it's very, very important.
Yeah, it's and really, well, of course, recycling things that are up there, that's even more important because hey,
Yep.
it's space. It costs a lot of money to get the stuff up there in the first place.
Yep.
It's kind of tragic that that these things are completely, kind of unusable. I think that a lot of people consider, an option of maybe, you put up a satellite with maybe lasers and you shoot these things in some kind of futuristic way and you get them to burn up in reentry,
Right.
and
Yeah.
you just knock them out.
Yeah.
But like you said, the better option would probably be to either reuse or recycle because again, it's expensive to get these things up there. So it's
Yep. Yep.
yeah.
Yep. So Intelsat 901 was a satellite that's working. So it ain't broke. So why let it die? So I just think it was a really intriguing story. And I think it could lead to a whole new exciting industry,
Well,
potential, maybe.
yeah, and just one project alone. Obviously, a lot of countries around the world are going to be launching more and more space debris. I think that India is now a spacefaring country. China, of course.
Japan, of course.
Japan, U.S., Russia, of course, a lot of the European countries. They all have to share the same space, which seems massive, but at the same time, it's and here's a little image we're going to put up on screen from this.
There
is
you
from
go.
Business
That's
Insider.
what I remember. Yeah.
And yeah,
Isn't that something?
yeah,
Holy
this
smokers.
is just one image. It is
Yikes.
cluttered up there, and I think that and hey, those are countries. Ralph, I'm sure that we've talked about Elon Musk on the show before,
Yes,
and
yes, of course,
Tesla and SpaceX. I think that his Starlink program or his Starlink initiative it calls for about 12,000 satellites, all
Yes.
in a single array.
Yep.
It's going to get crowded up there real fast. So I think this idea of rescuing disabled satellites is that's a good story. That's a good angle.
It's an interesting twist on the whole thing I hadn't thought about before. So that's very cool. The next one's also kind of in the category
For
of
sure. I keep touching my face.
clever.
Like I said I wouldn't, and now I have this subconscious, like my face just itches, and I'm just like,
I
need to
know.
touch it. Okay.
Oh, I know what you mean. I tell you, me too. I don't know what it is, and I think maybe it's because of this whole coronavirus thing. My face itches even more.
It's like when someone says you can see your nose at all times, or you are now, or like you're thinking about how you breathe. Like it's those annoying things that you're just like,
Yes.
why'd I do that?
Yes.
So
exactly.
okay, story number 3,
Anyway,
please. Distract
story
me, Ralph.
number 3.
Distract me.
There, let's get distracted. Okay. So headline: Flying cell phone towers. Could drones bring internet coverage to remote areas? Wait a minute. When I saw that headline, flying cell phone, what? This is from CNN Business News, a story by Emma Reynolds. Really fine. You should look at other photos of this thing. This is a pretty clever idea. So here's the scoop. As many of you already know, tech giants like Google and Facebook, and I recall Microsoft as well, they've been working for years trying to figure out how to bring the internet to billions of people who still lack a reliable connection. There's been ideas like upper atmosphere balloons and blimps and just all kinds of ideas.
Satellites,
well, yeah. And then there's, get this, a 22-year-old student named Rahul Tiwari at Purdue University cooked up this idea for what he calls a flying cell tower, which he calls telelift. And he did this, he came up with the idea in the summer of 2017. 22-year-old kid, I love this. So telelift is an attempt, as he puts it, to create a flying cell phone tower. Now it uses drones the size of a dining table. And again, you can see photographs that give you a better sense of this, which of course are equipped with all kinds of the communications gear needed to create a quote unquote cell tower. And these drones are attached to the ground. So they hover up above the earth about 200 feet. There's a long wire that comes. They don't fly around, they hover. They just stay in one position. So a long wire comes down to the earth, and it can be plugged into solar panels or a conventional power source on the ground. And the student claims that it uses about the same amount of power as a microwave. And he's actually created a company, it's based in Minnesota, called, I love the name of this, what a weird, interesting name, Spooky Action. is the name of his company. And he wants to first deploy these telelift hovering drone cell towers that can provide internet access in areas with poor internet coverage or no coverage, beginning in Kenya, Niger, Botswana, and Senegal. So, of course, emphasizing Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Each drone can provide a high quality internet service for several hundred people over a radius of between 20 to 30 miles. And the drones cost about $40,000, and they're fully automated when they're in flight, but do require a pilot to initially launch them and to bring them down for servicing every month or so that they require attention. So clever, simple. I also thought immediately to myself, oh, I bet the military might be interested in something like this. If they could launch something like this in combat zones and using highly encrypted communications and so forth, they could instantly create virtual cell towers for their purposes. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, there's just where does this idea go? And I just thought it was a clever thing, especially since it was cooked up by a 22-year-old student. Love it.
Yeah, it's certainly a different take on the idea of drone.
Yep.
I think that's unfortunately in a lot of kind of conflicts, places of conflict and war-torn areas. I think drones in general are seen as, well, a bad thing in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that something like this will prove useful and hopefully, use drone technology for good over there. I'm actually at their website.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Spook.io, by the way, spook.io. And yeah, they have the whole thing here.
Clever.
It is. And unfortunately, the technology seems a little threadbare as to how they're actually describing it. This is obviously a concept. I'd be interested to see just how much connectivity, because Ralph, I'm sure that I'm sure that you know this, that a lot of people in Africa, and I want to say hundreds of million currently, and will probably be billions in the next 20, 30 years, currently only have internet access through their cell phones.
Right.
And it's, only major cities and stuff like that. So, and this is just food for thought whenever this kind of topic comes up. Ralph, what does the face of the internet look like when currently my lights just flickered? What happens when hopefully they don't go out? So what happens to the face of the internet when right now you have a very I really wish my lights wouldn't go out. I said loudly, as hopefully someone is not messing with the lights. I'll turn those on in a minute. But yeah, so what does the face of the internet look like? Where right now it's really America, Canada, Europe, Central. Of course, China has their own kind of internet, sadly. But what happens when 2 or 3 billion people from Africa are looking for entertainment? They're looking for art. They're looking for projects. They're looking for services. They're looking for everything that the internet currently provides us. What does that look like in 20 years when 2 billion additional people are looking for Computer America to listen to?
Yeah, of course.
Of course. It's an exciting time that the internet is going to kind of explode in a second way.
Oh, yeah. It'll be, yes, you're right. It's uncharted territory. It'll be very interesting to see.
For sure. So yeah, let's go ahead and skip on over to the very next story number 4.
Yeah. So as you know, the last 10 years or so of my active career before I retired was with Autodesk. And in specific, I worked for the architecture, engineering, and construction group of Autodesk, all their software for that industry. So I have a real fondness for technology as it applies to construction. So this story from a magazine called Construction Dive, which has lots of wonderful technology stories. It's not just shovels and hard hats, folks. It's a lot of technology. Story by Zachary Phillips. The headline is Autonomous Security Bot Monitors Construction Job Sites with Facial Recognition Technology, which is really cool. So let me set the stage with what's the problem. The National Equipment Register estimates that the value of construction equipment stolen each year is somewhere between $300 million to $1 billion. So that's equipment and gear and so forth taken off of job sites. Just a terrible problem. British company Casta Spies, that's C-A-S-T-A, separate words, Spies, S-P-E-S Technologies. So British company Casta Spies Technologies has developed a robot designed for security surveillance of construction job sites. And it can drive autonomously through construction areas. Now, if you have the show notes, you'll see there's this kind of interesting looking device that looks like two bicycle wheels with all of the robotic gear in between these two wheels. It's a very curious
Ralph, I
looking
think you
robot.
nailed it. That describes it perfectly.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's a fun. You know what it looks like? It looks like one of those FIRST Robotics student competition robots. If you're
Mm-hmm.
familiar with FIRST Robotics, that's exactly what it looks like to me. But it's a really cool, elegant design in many respects. So, the robot is called Ziva, Ziva. As we said before, it's a two-wheeled image capturing robot that acts as a mobile closed circuit security system for construction job sites. The robot can travel up to 11 miles an hour, has a 12-hour battery life, uses cameras and facial recognition software to identify people and vehicles present on the job site and determine if they're supposed to be in that area or not. Now, right now, this robot is only available in Europe today, but
Mm-hmm.
the company plans to roll out Ziva, the robot, in the United States in 2021. Cost. So they think this Ziva will cost about $1,300 a month to rent, which the company claims is a substantial saving when compared to cost of security cameras and human guards on a construction site. Maybe yes, maybe no. But there's a lot of things you could poke holes in this idea.
Yeah.
Somebody could do the classic 21st century version of cow tipping and just knock this thing over and then steal everything they want. Could be, but
They
I
could just
just
take
think.
they could just take the drone.
Yeah, the way I look at this sort of stuff, Ben, as you know from working with me for many years, is it by itself, I don't think is the answer
Mm-hmm.
to construction site security, but in combination with some human activity and other technologies could be an important part of the solution. So, but I just love the design of the dang thing. That's it's a
Like
lot
so
of fun.
many things that we've talked about here today, we can say that technology gets cheaper, more affordable. It's easier to produce these things. What is $1,300 a month to rent today could come down to
Yes.
a couple hundred in a year or two, and
Yep.
then beyond that, I mean, look at what is happening in, let's say, the fast food industry. How many
Yes.
places do you see, like, tablets were prohibitively expensive, and
Right.
now giant tablets are
Big giant
in.
ones. Yeah.
Yeah, they're
McDonald's. Yeah.
everywhere. Yeah, touchscreens and that kind of thing. Like
Yep.
touchscreen technology alone was prohibitively expensive. Now they're everywhere.
Yeah,
Eventually,
absolutely.
this will make economic sense. And to your point, Ralph, yeah, this may not be the solution for today, but it's showing you where the security industry is going. And
Yep.
I can say, after kind of reviewing so many security cameras, don't get me
Mm-hmm.
wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The software in cameras has a long way to go when it comes to facial recognition, detection, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Man, they oversell themselves constantly. And I'm not no recent or guest or anything like that. It's just an industry standard that they oversell their technology. But it's getting better all the time, and it's getting cheaper all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's not there yet, but you can see that maybe in 20, in like Ralph, it really does seem like the idea of a camera up on a pole somewhere, that's going away. Hopefully in the next 5-10 years. I think the industry is moving away
Yeah.
from fixed
Yeah.
field of view cameras, and they're moving to autonomous patrolling, kind of self-directing cameras.
Yep.
That's the way this may not be the solution, but that's where it's indicating it's going.
Well, yeah, and to finish the story real quick on construction security relative to, say, stolen equipment.
Right?
When I was with Autodesk, one of the companies, I think they're called Redpoint. I think that's the name of it. But get this, the idea was embed little sensors or transceivers, if you will, into an expensive saw or an expensive piece of equipment. And so that when that piece of equipment unauthorized leaves the job site unauthorized, it sets off an alarm, and you can actually track the darn thing. You can say, "Oh, it's going down, 2nd Avenue at 30 miles an hour," and you can get the police and get the person arrested that's stealing the equipment. So to me, that's really powerful, simple. Same thing, they put sensors on the employees so that they know this is an authorized person, this is not. And more than that, safety. When you fall down, all of a sudden the job supervisor can realize, oh, wait a minute, the sensor on Joe is is horizontal right now. He's been horizontal for 10 minutes. Joe is either sleeping or he's in trouble. Anyway, I digress, but there's a lot of great technology.
Yeah, it's like Joe's sensor just fell 20 feet in like 2 seconds. That's not normal.
That's not good.
Yeah.
So there's lots and lots of technology. I'll leave this one last thing on construction. Go to a magazine like Construction Dive, click on the technology tab. It is absolutely fascinating to me how much technology is now available and getting put into our construction job sites. It's such young men and women, if you think going into construction is boring and just dirty work, think again. There's a place for you if you love technology in the construction field. So I'll get off my soapbox now.
Well, no, and one last thing for me is that next week we're scheduled for next Friday, but I'm sure that it'll air sometime in the coming weeks. But we're supposed to be interviewing this company here up on the video portion, Aquiline Drones, and they make drones for. You can see here perimeter security, law enforcement, asset inspection, which would be, kind of to your point, to be able to inspect construction sites or things without having to send someone up in a crane or something like that. We're gonna talk to them and see just the state of drones and where they're at, but they're invaluable. And hey, they weren't even available 10 years ago, and now I bet you construction sites can't operate without drones. They are just so important. So
they're using drones. Again, one last thing. Drones are being used a lot now in construction for inspecting high-rise construction. So you have, the city and county inspectors. Well, in the old days, they had to physically clamber up these structures and, all this stuff but now they can deploy a drone and go, okay, that bolting on the beams there, that's okay. Let's go up another 11th story. Yes, everything's looking great. And it saves a gobble of time and a ton of money.
Yeah, and of course, hopefully a couple lives. So that's definitely up there too. So with that being said, and one more time, I want to reiterate this, that everyone, if you want to check out these stories more in depth, I think that Ralph does a very good job of summarizing, but we are simply doing just that, summarizing these stories. Check out the show notes. We'll post them after the show. Oh, and by the way, Ralph, did I tell you that if you check out the Computer America YouTube channel, we're starting to put all of your videos into its own category. So if people want more Ralph, hey, we make it very simple that you can check out past shows. Because the news articles do get kind of older over time, but a lot of these are relevant for kind of a long time to come. So speaking of relevant, I guess in a day and age where we keep talking about coronavirus, staying healthy, staying ahead of your environment, well, this is a new one. And of course, it's just a patent filing.
That's right.
Patent filings don't indicate actual physical products or something that's going to come to market, but it shows a potential and what these companies are thinking about. Story number 5, Ralph, please.
Oh, yeah. Talk about something that I wish was here right now. Dyson, good old Dyson, the vacuum cleaning guys, and so many other products too. We know them so well. Dyson has filed a patent that describes an air purifying set of headphones. Now, the headphones play music like a regular headphone, but they also purify the air for the user. Wow. PC Magazine is where I saw this story by Matthew Humphreys. There's a diagram here from the patent filing if you want to see that. Nice artwork. So here we go. A new patent application reveals Dyson wants to make headphones that double as, quote, a wearable air purifier. The diagrams reveal what looks like a standard pair of headphones. If you have the show notes, you can see how it works. Dyson intends to embed a fan and purifying device inside each earphone. The fan spins at 12,000 RPM, allowing for 1.4 liters of air to be filtered through each earphone every second. So 1.4 liters of air to be filtered through each earphone every second. Every second. Wow. The purified air is then directed via perforated air jets towards the wearer's mouth, allowing the user to breathe in air free of pollutants. Now, it doesn't say free of airborne virus or anything of that nature. So let's be honest. I mean, we need to know more about how much purification we're talking about.
Mhm.
Dyson claims it can produce 2.4 liters of purified air per second, which should be more than enough to keep up with someone even exercising, maybe heavily breathing, right? If you've got an office, oh, I thought this was a really fun little line in the article. If you've got an office full of people wearing these headphones, it wouldn't take long for the entire office space to be turned into a clean air zone. That's an intriguing thought because many people nowadays work in these I'll call them token cubicle or almost like giant picnic table type working environments where you are really you don't have a private office anymore. You
Right.
barely have any cubicle walls. You're actually like sitting in these picnic
I
tables.
believe the term
Oh,
that companies are trying to put forward is the open office,
oh
and
yeah, open office. Yeah, right. Open for virus, open for
yeah,
business. Yee.
not great.
Anyway, so as Ben, you correctly pointed out at the beginning of the story, a patent application is no guarantee that a product will come to market. So we have no price or availability date at this time. But bravo to Dyson for thinking. I mean, that's clever thinking. That's intriguing thinking.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Dyson has one of the first. It was like a fan with like. And by the way, someone in the chat just corrected me. They're not just open office spaces; they're collaboration spaces as well.
Oh, collaboration. Okay.
Yeah. So whatever term that's. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you're sick of those, there is research out there to show that they do not help improve collaborability and or collaboration, and they do not improve focus or mood or anything like that. They're actually just a way for the company to cut costs. So whatever. But I will say that I
Don't
think
get me
Dyson.
started on that.
I know, well, don't worry. Everyone is now working from home, so everyone has their own cubicle. It's called their house.
Yes. Yes.
So I do want to say that Dyson and Ralph. Do you know if Dyson was one of the first ones to come out with one of those bladeless fans? Like
Oh, I would think they'd have to be, Ben.
I think they were, and of course
Yeah.
they were all over like Bed Bath and Beyond and places like that.
Yes.
My big thing is the noise pollution to an extent, although I think for the individual user, if you have constant noise coming through your headphones, it wouldn't be too bad for you. But I'm wondering what the noise pollution is for kind of others around you.
Yeah.
Even if it's like a low kind of hum just emitting from you.
Yeah, from the fan. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, you wouldn't be able to hear it because you have stuff playing in your headphones. But if others are annoyed by it,
Interesting point.
yeah, this would certainly be different. And although I gotta say, where better do you want purified air than around your head? So I don't know. Maybe if they can come out with a working prototype, right now it kind of feels like one of those things that's like that would be absolutely ridiculous and goofy. But those make
We'll
some of
see.
the best products. Who knows?
We'll see.
For sure. Story number 6. Let's go ahead
Yes.
and
Yes.
hey, I was feeling hungry, so let's talk about story number 6.
Hungry for human organs? Okay, a little cannibalism.
There you go. Well, hey, if it never came from a human, is it really cannibalism? Yes,
Good
yes,
point.
it still
Okay.
is. Yes, it still is.
So, story number 6 from Popular Science, story by Molly Glick is the author. Headline: Space might be the perfect place to grow human organs. Subtitle: Researchers are developing 3D bioprinters about 200 miles above the Earth. So, this is pretty interesting. In the next decade, specialized 3D bioprinters. So we know what 3D printers are like, using the plastic-like materials, but no, we're talking about bioprinters here, folks. So specialized 3D bioprinters could begin to build functioning human organs in space. It turns out that minimal gravity, or zero gravity, they should have said as well, conditions in space may provide a more ideal environment for building organs than the gravity-heavy Earth. And I don't know the science behind that. That's kind of intriguing. I'd like to know, what is it about zero or near zero gravity that is more conducive to this. Goes on to say, though, if successful space printed organs could help shorten transplant wait lists and even eliminate organ rejection,
Hmm.
a very enticing, teasing line that's not really fully explained, but I think would be fun to learn more about that, because if you can eliminate organ rejection, holy moly, that would be fantastic. Researchers at the International Space Station hope to eventually assemble organs from adult human cells, including stem cells. Now, reminder, stem cells are cells that can differentiate into other types of cells and can also divide in self-renewal to produce
Mm-hmm.
more of the same type of cells. So I think most of us are pretty hit up on what stem cells are. Goes on to say, so far, these printers have produced early versions of blood vessels, bones, and different types of living tissue by churning out repeated layers of bio ink. Then I went and looked up this. Bioink is a substance comprised of living human cells and other tissue that's meant to mimic the natural environment that surrounds growing organs. So, really interesting tease kind of story, some things that need a little more explanation and so forth. But I just thought that's a fun, interesting thing about bioprinting, which I think is a really interesting field in itself.
So, and the only question I have about this, and it may be completely unrelated, and someone who is much more versed in this field could correct me. But Ralph, have you ever heard of the experiment about they built these big domes out in the middle of nowhere,
Mm,
and they were growing plants in
hmm
they were growing trees and stuff within the domes, and I swear this is not a TV show, but they were growing like trees. But eventually, when the trees grew tall enough, they started to fall over. Like they just fell over and
huh,
died. And
mm.
they were like, "What? I wonder what that is." Turns out that the constant kind of breeze and swaying, that kind of thing, kind of stresses the trees enough that it kind of makes them uh, it makes them stronger, because of the
Ah,
constant, a little bit of
yes,
flexing, and
yes.
without the wind, these trees, even though they had all the nutrients, water, sunlight
Hmm.
that they could want, they weren't being stressed, and they collapsed under their own weight. I'm hoping that organs grown in zero gravity don't suffer the same thing, is that they don't have that constant little bit of micro stress, and I'm not sure if
Interesting.
that would even apply to something like a heart. But hey, these things are going, unless people are going to be transported to zero gravity and use zero gravity organs in zero gravity, eventually they're going to be putting people, and then they're going to be stressed constantly. So
Yeah. That's a very
I don't know.
intriguing idea. Yeah, that, like I say, this article for me was more of a kind of, I want to learn more. I need to dig deeper. But the catalyst of that article is really kind of fun. This whole thing about the whole world of bioprinters. Now we're talking about bioprinters in outer space and what
Yeah.
are various possible benefits, and certainly organ regeneration, especially if you could regenerate or create organs, replacement organs for human beings that solve the problem of rejection by the body. Oh my, that could be just wow,
I
wonderful.
honestly don't think that is too far, too far out there.
Yeah.
But then I go back to my very first, kind of little dark point there.
hmm
Is it really cannibalism if it was never
hmm
from a human?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Well, yeah. And the other thing, let's go into our pocketbooks for a minute. So it's great you can do this in outer space, but only the super billionaires could afford to commission this initially, unless it's done in some way to make it very democratic, I guess you could say. I don't know. Who's going to get these fabulous organs? Uh, Only the rich, or what? So
yeah.
something to think about there.
Well, I think the rich are going to hold off until a couple of live test subjects are, kind of have theirs. So be the first in line for some of these clinical trials, and
There
hey,
you go.
you may get it before it's cost prohibitive. So I will say that. But let's go ahead and continue on. Time for a couple of stories here, and I'll start looking
Sure.
for some of these that really jump out to me. But until
Yeah.
then, this one probably would have jumped out at me anyways. And
Yes.
robot swarms, please.
Yeah, this is a fun one. And per Ben's comment, it's a running joke between me and Ben. We never make it through all my stories, or very rarely. So
Nope.
the show notes give you a fun place to come back, not only to refresh on the stories we've done so far today, get links, learn more, but also to see other stories we just don't get a chance to cover in the show time frame. So with that said, story 7, headline: U.S. Army uses gamers' brainwaves to train robot swarms. Okay, that's a headline that's got so much going on for it, I couldn't resist. Popular Mechanics is a source, story by Courtney Linder. Really, and there's a fun image in here too, by the way. Uh, Here we go. Researchers at the University at Buffalo are using gamers' brainwaves to advance the progress of robot swarms that could be used in the military. Now, Ben, I know you know what a robot swarm is, but for some listeners who might not, let's give a little lesson here.
Please.
So, what is a robot swarm? using groups of simple robots to complete complex tasks rather than one extremely advanced and all add expensive robot is referred to as swarm intelligence within the artificial intelligence theory realm. Okay. So the simplest way to think about it is how bees and ants work together as a team. It's the same kind of concept with robot swarms. One friend of mine said, "Oh, you mean like those drones at the Super Bowl a year ago or so that Intel coordinated and they formed patterns and so forth and so on." That's kind of a version of swarming.
Right.
So DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, has given a federal grant to the University at Buffalo Artificial Intelligence Institute to study gamers' brain waves and eye movements. DARPA hopes this new training method will improve organization and strategy among autonomous air drones and ground robot swarms used on the battlefield. Now, where do the gamers come into this equation?
Good question.
The researchers are developing their own unique strategy-based game. Must be really interesting. So as the gamers play, the decisions they make are recorded, and researchers will track their eye movements through high-speed cameras. In tandem with that, their brain activity will be monitored through electroencephalograms generated by gamer headsets with electrodes on the cap. So there's this really almost funny picture of this player with this huge headdress. It looks like Medusa or something.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's kind of fun. And then based on the data they've gathered, the scientists will build new algorithms that will guide autonomous drone and ground robot swarms used in military applications. So it's this whole kind of idea of synchronizing, using the what they learn about gamers, the way gamers move and think and react, and so on and so forth. I just thought this was a very intriguing story, and also kind of spooky and creepy to think about warfare in the future being, these autonomous drones and little mini robots running around on the ground. Although I guess it's better to have them get hurt than people. Although I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, it's well, and I guess where where all this comes in is that they have to have something to to kind of compare things to. And for now, I guess gamers are a decent place because, of course, the strategy game and having someone who, I think they're using the term gamer here as just someone who plays video games very, very well, and they're going to kind of train the robots on this. I guess robot swarms can do things. I don't know. DARPA is one of these institutions, much like Lockheed Martin and
MIT and all that
and MIT, that do things just to do things. And then what actually comes out of it. Hopefully, killer robot swarms are not one of them. But I can see where having multiple robots, and even in the past, Ralph, we've had stories where multiple robots are proposed to accomplish one mission that would never work with a singular robot. So.
Agree.
There is application. So Ralph, I was able to kind of take a look at some of the other stories.
Sure.
Story number 8 is pretty darn good, and we'll try to do that real quick. But I wanted to get the highlights of 8, the highlights of 9, and then all the way down to 14. I really wanted to squeeze 14 in before we go.
Sure. So we'll do a kind of a condensation here for story 8. Also from Popular Mechanics, a story by Kyle Mizukami. Headline: Mixed reality goggles will give U.S. Army soldiers supervision. I don't mean supervision like somebody monitoring what they're doing as a supervisor. No, super eye vision, okay? Really fun. So basically what's happening is our U.S. Army is planning to buy 40,000 pairs of mixed reality goggles. And I think everybody knows what mixed reality is. Think of Pokemon Go, right? Where the real world you see is co-mixed with computer-generated images to give you information or give you some kind of advantage. So this so-called integrated visual augmentation system of goggles will allow soldiers to identify friendly and enemy forces and aim their weapons directly without seeing the enemy. That's pretty interesting. Trying to condense this thing down here, a lot of this is based on Microsoft's HoloLens 2 mixed reality system. That's kind of interesting. So check that story out later. It's kind of fun and kind of interesting to think about our soldiers being augmented. They're already being augmented as we speak. Of course, they have been for a number of years, but with night vision capabilities and so on and so forth. But this just adds another layer. Story 9 is kind of fun from the Washington Post, a story by Ian Duncan. Headline: Self-driving car company Nuro, N-U-R-O, wins first federal safety approval for a grocery delivery robot. So for an autonomous vehicle in this category. So
I
go ahead.
sorry to jump in here,
Yeah.
but I just want to say that this one caught my eye because of what's happening in today. And I actually heard a story about, and this almost kind of breaks my heart a little bit.
Mm,
But there was an elderly couple who were
mm,
outside of a grocery store and they were afraid to go in. And I'm like, first of all,
mm.
obviously coronavirus and they were afraid of
Yes.
contracting it. You're already
Yes.
out in front of the grocery store. You might as well go in. But I got to say that they were asking people, they had cash and they were like, hey, can you go in and buy our
Oh.
groceries and bring
Oh.
them out to us? And I was like,
Oh.
there is a service for that already in many, many cities across the
Yeah.
country. There are grocery delivery
Yes.
services all over. And that's essentially what they were asking people to do.
Hmm.
And so I was like, if they could find a way to, kind of even further simplify that and get that to the
Yep.
masses, and hey, in a situation like we're currently in, it would be in such high demand.
Couldn't agree more. That was a wonderful example, and like you say, kind of heartbreaking. But I think what our listeners should do is come back to the show notes and learn more about this because we're running short on time. But it is a breakthrough. It's the first federal safety approval for an autonomous vehicle that's designed to deliver groceries. It's a cute little thing too, and you see the picture. And to your point, Ben, I think it's in South Korea. I think, but I
Hmm.
saw a news story about an autonomous vehicle, much like this, delivering medicines and supplies, and the vehicle is fully sanitized when it's deployed,
Interesting.
and it's designed to go and deliver to patients who are quarantined and so forth, much needed medicines and supplies and so forth. So there's a great future for this sort of thing. And then you were saying story 14 you wanted to touch on, so let's scroll down to that.
I'm a sucker for freebies, and I think any resource out
Oh,
there that
yes,
anyone
yes, I
makes
know what we're.
free is,
Yes.
yeah.
This is fun. This is really cool. It's not so much a technology trends or breakthrough thing, but just kind of cool. Story is Smithsonian releases 2.8 million free images for broader public use. Also, some data too, by the way. This is from a February 25th Smithsonian news release. Immediately caught my eye, and I actually went out and played around on the website. It's kind of fun. So late last month, the Smithsonian announced the launch of Smithsonian Open Access, an initiative that removes Smithsonian copyright restrictions from about 2.8 million of its digital collection of images and nearly 2 centuries of data. So, in a nutshell, you can go out there and get this stuff, and you can do with it as you please, unless there's some kind of flag about some kind of restricted use. But by and large, we're talking about 2.8 million items available for this purpose. It says here among museums and cultural institutions, this is the largest and most interdisciplinary open access program to date. Let's go on here and get you. What's included are high resolution 2D and 3D images of collection items, as well as research databases and collections of metadata, which you can download and access in bulk if you want to. Now, they're drawing from the Smithsonian's 19 museums, 9 research centers, libraries, archives, and even the National Zoo all contributed images or data to this launch. And the program includes content across the arts, sciences, history, culture, technology, and design. And it's everything you can imagine, from portraits of historic American figures to 3D scans of dinosaur skeletons. Now, if you've got a kid who loves dinosaurs, that's got to be fun. I got to check that out myself. I think that'd be really cool.
That's one of those things that's and it the implications of something like that seem very, very minimal, but think about that 3D scans of dinosaur skeletons. What can you do with that? Well, animators can of course work with hopefully
Yep.
high quality 3D scans, and they can
Yep.
make realistic animations on their own. You could have of course assets in video games and things like that
Yeah.
be completely free. You could have so many different possibilities for, of course, high, like you said, just 2D, 3D images, all these things free for use. I always appreciate it whenever, there's these massive databases that, become available to people because, of course we do our own thing here at Computer America, but a lot of news organizations have to subscribe to something like a Getty Images,
Yes.
and that can
Right.
cost thousands and thousands to get the
Hmm.
rights to
Hmm.
particular images.
Hmm.
And I've never been really one for stealing, so having
Yeah.
having those public to use images is just a boon for in so many different industries. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I definitely bookmarked that one. That's something that's
Yeah, check it out. It's a fun website. It's pretty easy to navigate too, and it's really pretty cool.
For sure, for sure. So with that being said, Ralph, we have about a minute left, and with that being said, I want people to know what you're up to, because you mentioned just earlier today you were actually, you had your hand aside with another radio station.
Oh yeah. So what I do locally here in the Portland, Oregon area is I'm a technology correspondent, if you will, for the Mark Mason Show. If you want to find out about that part of my life, and of course everything I'm doing with Computer America, of course go to computeramerica.com and to the YouTube channel for Computer America and get to my zone that Ben was talking about at the beginning of the show to learn more about what I've done for the show in the past. But for me specifically, just point your browser to this. It's super easy. My first name, Ralph, R-A-L-P-H. My last name, Bond, B-O-N-D, just like the infamous spy. And then the word Wix, W-I-X, boom. Or even just my name. You should pull up my website, and then you'll see tabs for the Computer America Show and tabs for my KEX radio stuff that I do, and general information about me. And welcome you to come out and check that out. We'll see you next month with more interesting stories.
Absolutely. And thank you so much. That was a perfect outro. And everyone, once again, check out the show notes. And hey, we'll have a link to all that right there. Ralph, until next month, have a great one. Stay safe. I know that, hey, Seattle, the epicenter for the American cases.
God, just up the road.
Up the road. And everyone, actually, not just Ralph, but everyone, stay safe. Stay sanitary. Stop touching your face like I did this whole hour. And everyone, have a great one. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.